My guest today is Mike Battistella. Mike's had a very varied career in IT and recruitment. Mike is President and CTO of Solutions3, an award-winning cybersecurity and IT service management consulting and training organization. He is also a director of the DVMS Institute, which focuses on cybersecurity career development and teaching organizations of any size how to build an adaptive, cyber-resilience digital value management system. Mike is also a regular contributor of articles on cybersecurity and IT service management, as well as serving on various academic and non-profit boards. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Richard. Always a pleasure to join you and your counterparts.
Excellent. So tell me, Mike, you've got a very long career in this marketplace around IT and cyber. So, people talk about I'm compliant. My organization is compliant, my systems are compliant. So is passing a cybersecurity compliance audit ever enough to ensure long-term security?
It's always interesting when they would start a conversation like that. We're compliant. And it's almost like they're taking it from something they have away from something they need to be doing. So it's almost like compliance is this end game. It's the end of the journey, right? They're equating compliance with security. They're equating compliance with, if I'm compliant, I'm obviously secure. I've passed all the requirements. I've met all the requirements. When in fact, when you think about it, those compliance requirements are effectively the bare minimum that an organization needs to do to pass whatever compliance requirement or audit that they're facing. And when I have my clients and they say, look, I need to pass the audit. I need to pass the audit. And they're viewing that as desired state or as the end state. And I don't want to downplay the importance of that. But passing the audit is not the end game. Passing the audit is a very important milestone that needs to be met. If we don't meet that milestone, they may not be able to do business in that industry, or they may not get a contract award, or they may not be able to, get into a new technology area or whatnot. So passing the compliance audit is very important milestone, but then what? Okay, I passed the audit. I've done the minimum. And Richard, if I could, just, let me just kind of share a filter that you need to hear it from, or the audience needs to hear this from or through. If we talk about national security, the security of our infrastructure, the safety of our food and water supply, the security of our higher education systems, our financial systems, our electrical grid, our nuclear power plants, our small, medium, large-size businesses, higher education, did I give you enough? Okay, that's our filter. And when we say that through that filter, I've done the bare minimum to pass my audit, that makes no sense to me, right? So really, the whole idea of compliance is this is the minimum you have to do, but we've got to change our mindset. We have to have a transformation of how we do cybersecurity and take it beyond that and really continually improve what it is we're doing.
I mean, that's a very interesting insight that, the compliance audit is the starting line. That's the baseline that organizations need. And clearly you have that conversation quite often with some of your clients. What else do they have misconceptions about? So as well as thinking an audit says we're okay, are there any other general misconceptions people have about what they need to have a resilient cybersecurity solution?
What I'm really hoping is they see what's happening in the market. And in the market, when you look at the very highly visible breaches that have taken place, those organizations passed their audit. They are compliant, yet they're still being breached. So the misconception is, because I did this, because I passed it, I can kind of go back to business as usual. And really, when you think about the dollars involved in preparing for an audit, getting everything in place, there's almost like this rush. I got to, right? And during that phase of that intense, angst that's going on within the organization and the dollars that are spent, there's a lot of to-dos. There's a lot of I should, I could, I would. So there's this significant list of to-dos that gets put into place. We might formally call that a POAM, a plan of action and milestones. And once they pass the audit, and now it's okay, we can do business, we can do our thing. That POAM gets put on the shelf many times. And the could have, would have, should have, and I'll get to it, often doesn't happen until the next time they have to either self-assess or they have another audit, and then there's all this craziness again and all this money spent again and all this angst. Where if they could adopt a continual improvement methodology, an approach of operationalizing the controls, measuring the performance, baselining how we're doing, and constantly monitoring so that we continually improve. Let's face it, logic tells me that if we pass the audit once and we continually measure, monitor, and improve, we should pass it the next time, and we should be ready. And one of the things that I believe we're somewhat unique as a small company, I'll say unique as a small company, is the fact that we've been doing IT service management for as long as we have, and the cybersecurity, GRC, governance, risk management, compliance. We're really marrying the two, or merging the two. So taking a lot of the best practices that have existed on the IT side, change management, configuration management, those kinds of things, and applying it to how we're doing cybersecurity. So for instance, if I take a simple thing, I have a supporting artifact. We are doing this with change control. Okay, show me the proof. I have the proof. Now, if I take that and I put that supporting artifact under change control, when I make a change to the infrastructure, part of the change management process is to also update that infrastructure document or that supporting artifact. So guess what I've done? I'm setting myself up so if the auditor shows up unannounced, I can say, come on in, the coffee's on, the donuts are there, let's sit down and do our thing. And I can do it without the stress and the cost that many organizations go through. And the truth is, Richard, the misperception is, this is wasted money. It's money I don't have. But interestingly enough, when the breach happens, and I've led a number of incident response team, when the breach happens, I hear a different story. You know what I hear? I don't care what it costs. We got to get back up. I don't care what it costs. Just get us back up. When in fact, if we did the things up front the right way, it would have cost significantly less.
But Mike, isn't that truly is a mindset issue, isn't it? It's people look at it very differently. And do we also have an added issue today? I mean, everyone talks about innovation and agility. Everyone wants to be moving faster, build it, fail fast and move on and what have you. So the whole drive in business and in commerce these days is around speed, innovation, agility.
Yep.
Yet cybersecurity measures, as you've described them, are about continuous improvement of some basic fundamental things within the business. So is there a real tension there? Do you see that tension with your clients? And do you think there's a solution, or is that just the world in which we now live?
So there's definitely a tension. Many times, if you're dealing with a certain level within the organization. So let's say I'm dealing with the senior VP of IT and security. And this individual I'm working with absolutely knows what needs to be done, is absolutely aware of, what we've strategized, we've laid it out, we've, cost analysis, the whole works. And then he presents it to a CFO. And the CFO looks at it, it's like, what's my return on investment? Well, that's the wrong lens that you're looking for. It's not a return on investment. It's staying in business. It's protecting our customers. It's protecting our digital assets, our digital value in the marketplace. So it's not a return on investment kind of thing. It's let's survive. It becomes a survival thing. What's really changing, some of the SEC rulings, here in the States and whatnot, they're starting to put the onus on the board members and the C-level executives, and if you're breached and you have not been doing the things that you said you're doing, right? And that's a big issue. We're not doing the things that we have documented that we are doing necessarily. And if you affect your supply chain, well, you could be legally and financially responsible, and we've seen some of that going down. So I think there's always going to be that battle. Like the C-level may be thinking this is just another technology thing that they're going after. It's another silver ball that they're chasing. It's another toy that they want. How does it fit into the overall big picture? When in fact, what we're doing, especially with the DVMS, it has nothing to do with the technology per se. It has to do with how are we doing cybersecurity in our organization. And I think as we help organizations through that transition, we become strategic advisors, strategic partners with the business, because we're not trying to sell them something. We're trying to help them survive in a realm where the bad guys have the upper hand, and the bad actors, they're always one step ahead of us. We're always on defense. They're on offense. We have to respond to them. The only thing we can do in our response is, if we're breached, do the right things, but try to create an infrastructure or an environment where we're making it as difficult as possible for them.
So talking of DVMS, the Institute's got a CPD model, which I believe is create, protect and deliver, digital business value.
Yeah.
So how does that work? How does that work within an organization? As you say, you got the leadership team having this debate about, we need to do this, but where's my return on investment?
Mm-hmm.
You've no doubt got the operational team saying, the customer wants it today, I don't have time to do this, all this stuff you're asking me to do about compliance and governance. And you got the sales team trying to say, I've got this great client out there, don't worry me with the details, I want to take the order.
Yep.
Yeah, paraphrasing what might happen in a large organization.
Yep.
So what's the concept behind CPD? And is it a top-down? Is it a bottom-up? How would you describe it to somebody that, you meet on a train or you meet on a bus and they say to you, Mike, what do you do? How would you explain CPD to that person?
Well, I don't know if you should ask me that question, because my analogy takes some time. but I do liken it to on the IT side, and I want to preface it with this is not ITIL. It's not ITIL, but the ITIL model works for me, and I'll tell you why. On the IT side, they have ITIL or something like that, right? There's different models out there. But the whole idea behind it is continual improvement. If someone were to say, hey, Mike, you've been doing this for a long time, just give me the bottom line. What is the bottom line about ITIL? I would tell you here's the bottom line. Let's do better today than we did yesterday. If we're always improving. Everything about ITIL is about continual improvement. Go back to what we talked about with the controls. We don't have that model. We don't have that mindset. We have I got to get past the audit. And again, those controls are the minimum we need to do. So what the CPD model is a result of some amazingly creative and strong ITIL-like folks and systems folks, two in particular, the two Davids, as you know. And they have put that knowledge together to say, let's create an operating system for cybersecurity. That's what the CPD model is. It is an operating system for cybersecurity. It teaches, through the courses and the publications, we're teaching organizations how to operationalize those controls, how to measure, how the systems work together. Dave Moskowitz always talks about, the systems of a car. You have your cooling system and your engine system and your, the different systems within a car. Well, you have that within the organization, and you have that within cybersecurity. And these individual systems, they work together. You can't take your air conditioning system and drive to Texas with it. You have to have all the systems working together. And if one thing is off, because they're integrated in with each other, if one is off, it can impact, all the others. So that's the CPD model. So the CPD model, think about this. Organization has a product, an application, or something that they're putting out there. They develop it, and then they put it out. And then they say, oh man, how are we going to protect this thing? And so they take what they know and they put this protective wrapper around it, hoping they didn't miss anything. Do you ever wrap something for, your grandchild or your son or daughter, and it's, it's big, it's bulky, it has a weird shape, and you're trying to get all this wrapping paper around it, hoping that there's no holes or gaps? I'm making this analogy up as I go, so I hope it works.
Yeah, that works. I can understand that.
Well, that's what happens, right? They build this, nice application, and it's going to do all this great stuff, or, whatever that it might be. And then they put it out, get ready to put it out. And then it's like, security's an afterthought. Let's wrap something around it and hope that it's protected. The whole idea between the CPD model is you design security in the beginning. You design it as you go. So instead of putting a wrapper around it, when you create it with security in mind, then you deploy it with security in mind, and you operate it with security in mind. So we're creating, protecting, and delivering digital business value, because that's what the organization's all about. And I forget who the person was that said it. I had it on the top of my head just a little while ago because I wanted to share it with you, but the question was asked, what is the purpose of business? Matter of fact, we just started with 8 interns on Monday, and I asked this question. And matter of fact, we just launched an 853 assessment for a client just yesterday. And so both times I asked the question, what is the purpose of business? And I didn't make this up. This came from somebody else. What is the purpose of business? And you heard the typical things, to make money, to create jobs. And whoever this individual is that I can't remember, and I apologize, but the response was, no, well, those are all good things, but the purpose of business is to obtain and retain customers. That made it simple, right? Because if you can obtain a customer and retain the customer, you create jobs, you generate wealth, money comes in, right? So that's the purpose. So what are we trying to do with CPD model and DVMS Institute and the various things that we're doing is all about helping clients in their acquisition and retainment of clients, of customers. And if you have poor cyber hygiene and they get breached and you get breached, you get a bad reputation out there, or you really risk losing customers. And the whole idea of your business is to retain them.
And Mike, that strikes me as the biggest challenge is at the leadership level. The biggest challenge is at not necessarily we always talk about the C-suite in terms of private organizations, but unless there is that drive from the top that says we recognize that security is integral to what we do, as you say, reputation, client data, lawsuits, and whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But even with that, organizations are still at base zero. They're still looking at, I've got an ISO 27000 compliance and therefore I'm okay.
Right, exactly right.
Where have we lost this ability to educate? And I like your analogy with ITIL and service management, but very, very few organizations have continuous improvement of their processes, mm-hmm. and very few organizations do that. So it's the same argument, isn't it? There's ITIL in name only, or 3 processes, mm-hmm. because that's all we need to do, rather than embracing the whole concept of high-quality service management, high-quality cybersecurity, because, as you say, people don't see the benefit, they only see the price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a huge challenge.
Yeah, it definitely is, and to be honest with you, I don't have an answer to that. The things that I see, the conversations I have, doing a podcast like this, doing some of the things that we're doing with Level Up, talking about those, it's really conversation and, various groups that I'm part of, or networking groups or peer groups. I'm a proponent and an evangelist for a lot of these kinds of things and getting the word out. The DVMS Institute, doing a great job of proclaiming it. We've gotten involved with the Safe House Initiative, and I love the approach of these guys. It's like they're identifying people that have a voice, have something that needs to be heard, and they're taking that and amplifying it. I like that what they say. Our purpose is to amplify, your message, your voice. So, and that's really all we can do. But to address the the major issue that you asked about with the executives, that's where the DVMS has come in with the culture assessment. So you want to be able to go in, and it's interesting, not to go back to ITIL, but I'm just I'm amazed that every chapter in the book ends with what are the critical success factors, and the first bullet on every one of those lists is executive sponsorship. And in the even in the course book, the courseware, it's the same thing. It ends with critical success factors. The first bullet is executive sponsorship. It's the same with cybersecurity. If you don't have executive sponsorship, you don't want to say, well, don't do anything. Let's do what we can. But it will never be successful without executive sponsorship. It has to come. You asked me before about, is it top down? Is it bottom up? And the answer is yes. It's got to be driven up, and it's got to be driven from the top down. It's got to be both. And so what I'm really loving about this cultural assessment is you can go in and say, let's talk about your culture. Let's understand where you are from a, we can do our typical technology thing, current state, desired state. Where are you today? Where do you want to be? And let's look at the organization as a culture, and through that lens of cybersecurity. And then you keep adding to it, right? It's through the lens of leadership. It's through the lens of communication. It's through the lens of being efficient and effective. So that thing can really grow and expand. But it's having an organization where the leadership recognizes we have a problem. We're not doing this well. We're not growing the way we want to grow. We don't have the atmosphere that we really want to achieve. And so somebody within the organization needs to say, I believe in this enough to put my name on it, to put, my job, my career on the line. Even if I've got to buck the system, we've got to do this, and we've got to better understand what it is we can do so that we can be all that we can be.
So do you think there's around the governance side, there's a lot of interest over the last few years on ESG, and do you think there's a role within the governance component that includes cybersecurity? And if organizations are reporting against their ESG stance, and there's all these stories about regulators may be asking for that, big investors are asking for, what are you doing on ESG? Is there a subset of G that is, well, what are you doing on cybersecurity? Yeah. And not so much about what are you doing within the organization technically, because you wouldn't want to give that away to the bad guys.
Right.
But what are you doing at the C-suite to make sure you've got the right culture, you've got the right approach, you are using things like the CPD model to actually drive that through the organization. Do you sense that there could be a regulatory move at some time?
Well, so interestingly enough, with the 2.0 release of the NIST cybersecurity framework, governance all of a sudden showed up on the scene. So where before it was the 5 areas, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, now there's a 6th area, and it's the first pillar is governance. So I think that there's a recognition in the industry that it's got to be part of ESG or, tied into that. And I think organizations, when they think of governance and, they think of governance and, they look at those compliance requirements and, it starts bouncing around like a pinball, who's got this and who's got that. To be totally transparent, I'm doing an assessment now where the IT team is in charge of it. And there's no higher level executives that are really, engaged, right? So you've got a small IT team that's been given the responsibility of this, and they're looking at it. And I hope I'm not offending anybody if they watch this, but I feel badly for them because the weight of the world is on them to get this done, and the majority of it is not their pay grade, right? So we're going in saying we are going to do the best that we can. We're going to help them the best that we can. They're going to have new terminology that they haven't been using before. They're going to have they're viewing things now even after this short amount of time, already through that lens of leadership and lens of compliance. How is the auditor going to be looking at this? One of the analogies I shared with the guys yesterday was, as practitioners, we tend to look at functionality and capability, right? So if there's a compliance requirement and we look at it and say, we can do that, right? We can give you the capability, we can make it, give you the functionality that'll satisfy that. But the lens of the auditor is different, right? The lens of the practitioner, functionality, capability, the lens of the auditor is, prove it. Show me. Where's the documentation? Are you following the documentation? If I asked one of your team members that's doing this thing that you said they do, are they going to know about the documentation? If I talk about the policy and they look at me and say, what policy? I've never seen the policy. This is not a good thing, right? So the auditor wants to see that not only have you documented it's under version control, people are using it, that they can track the updates to it. There's the auditor's looking through a very different lens, and I think it takes, folks like us that are doing this to not only be practitioners but understand what the auditor's looking for, so we can give them the functionality, the capability, and the evidence. And that's what often is missing. And I think that's where what you were talking about with governance, where that is going to fit in there.
Mike, that's fascinating. Many thanks for your time. It's been great talking to you. And I'm sure we could go on forever and ever. Maybe we'll have a chance to pick up the conversation at another time. Thanks very much.
Sounds great, Richard. Thank you.